Tonight you belong to me. Have you ever looked into a stranger's eyes and felt as if they were peering straight into your soul, as if they could make you do anything they wanted? Tonight I'm going to share with you the story of Los Dominadores, the Controllers, an ancient Mexican legend about people who can control minds with just a glance. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones, because tonight you'll never look into a stranger's eyes the same way again. Sofia Velasquez checked her appearance in the restaurant window before entering. Exactly 1 year since her last relationship ended, and although she never said it aloud after what she'd experienced with her ex, she hadn't planned on dating again anytime soon. This date had been entirely spontaneous, almost accidental. After weeks of engaging text conversations with Adrian Montero, curiosity had finally gotten the better of her. The restaurant was near the Angel of Independence Monument in Mexico City, not one of those advertised on social media, but one that hid behind a discreet facade with an entrance on a side street. It was beautiful inside, with soft lighting, white tablecloths, and gentle music barely audible in the background. What made it exclusive was precisely that not many people knew it existed. Adrian was already seated, rising as she approached. Sofia couldn't help noticing his appearance. Tall, with broad shoulders, dark hair, neatly styled, and deep brown eyes. But what drew her attention most was something in his gaze, a mixture of confidence and calm that made it difficult not to pay attention to him. "You're right on time," he said, pulling out her chair. "I suggest trying the 2015 Tempranillo red wine. It pairs perfectly with their braised beef." The conversation flowed easily. Adrian spoke with rare confidence, but without seeming arrogant. He listened well, asked questions that showed genuine interest, and occasionally laughed warmly when Sofia shared stories about her work as a reporter. There was undeniable chemistry between them. Everything was going perfectly except for one thing: the strange gestures Adrian made occasionally. At first they were almost imperceptible. He would look at one of the waiters, staring intently as if wanting to make them come over with just his gaze. And oddly enough, the waiter would come. "Would you like more wine?" Adrian asked, never taking his eyes off Sofia. "Yes, thank you," she replied. Without Adrian calling or signaling, a waiter appeared with the bottle. Not just once, but this happened throughout dinner. Adrian didn't need to say a word. He would simply look and the waitstaff would appear. He wasn't rude about it, but there was a strange authority in his manner, something that made Sofia feel he wasn't asking for things, but ordering them. "Are you familiar with this restaurant?" Sofia asked. Adrian smiled. "I know many places in Mexico City, but no, I'm not particularly familiar with this establishment. Perhaps they just appreciate discerning customers." The dinner continued perfectly. Delicious food, excellent wine, deep conversation. The dim light reflected through wine glasses, creating mysterious shadows on the white tablecloth. The atmosphere was warm, smelling of browned butter and freshly served meat. Then a loud noise suddenly shattered the atmosphere. The main door burst open, slamming against the wall. A knife fell to the floor, bouncing with a sharp clinking sound. The pianist in the corner stopped playing abruptly. The sound of traffic flooded in from the street, along with 4 dark figures. 4 armed, masked men walked in quickly, forming a line. One remained guarding the entrance. Another pointed his weapon toward the tables, and the other 2 advanced toward the center of the room. The sound of a gun being loaded was followed by absolute silence. Diners dropped to the floor almost simultaneously, chairs falling, glasses spilling wine, staining white tablecloths like blood. Staff ran toward the kitchen, swinging doors slamming shut behind them. And then Adrian stood up. While everyone was flattening themselves against the floor, he rose unhurriedly with an elegance that seemed out of place, raising his hands with terrifying calmness as if he knew exactly what to do. One of the robbers aimed his gun directly at Adrian's chest. Sofia screamed a short cry of pure reflex. But Adrian didn't move. He simply stared at the robbers with that same firm, controlled look, without fear or pleading. And then the impossible happened. The men froze, all 4 of them. For a moment time seemed to stop. Then they lowered their weapons, turned around, and walked toward the exit, as if they had suddenly remembered something more urgent to do. The last one out gently closed the door without making a sound. No one understood what had just happened. People looked at each other, still waiting for the disaster, the gunshot, the chaos that never came. Staff gradually emerged from the kitchen, some trembling, others pretending normalcy, as if nothing had happened. And nobody said anything. No one thanked the man Sophia was dining with because no one had noticed. No one except Sophia. Adrian had given the robbers the same look he had given the waiters earlier. That look that made people obey without understanding why. 3 hours' drive north of Mexico City, Diego Herrera had just moved into the small wooden cabin he'd rented for his writing retreat. A writer facing creative block, Diego believed time in a remote location would help him rediscover his inspiration. The cabin was near a pine forest away from the city's noise. The water from the stream behind the house is very pure, the landlady, Mrs. Martinez, had said when giving him the keys. But don't drink too much. Local people believe it has strange properties. Diego smiled politely, not really believing in the local superstitions. He unpacked his belongings into the closet, setting up a small workspace with his laptop and reference books. This would be where he completed the novel he had abandoned halfway through. As night fell, Diego stepped onto the porch, sipping a whiskey, and looking up at the star-filled sky, a sight impossible to see in Mexico City. He took a deep breath, feeling the clean air fill his lungs. Life here was simple but peaceful, exactly what he needed. "I'll check the internet line tomorrow," he reminded himself, looking toward distant utility poles. "And maybe try drinking the stream water to see if it has strange properties like Mrs. Martinez said." Neither Diego nor Sophia knew that this first night was the beginning of a series of events that would change their lives forever and connect them to an ancient legend about people who could control others' minds with just a look. Sophia sat in silence in Adrian's car, trying to comprehend what had happened at the restaurant. He drove skillfully through the streets of Mexico City, his hands light and confident on the wheel, as if his mind wasn't troubled by having just driven away 4 armed robbers with only a glance. "Aren't you going to talk about what just happened?" she finally asked. Adrian glanced at her, his eyes strangely calm. "What would you like me to say? Those men, they were going to rob the restaurant. You just looked at them and they left." He smiled slightly. Sometimes people realize they've made a mistake. Perhaps they just needed someone to remind them of that. "That's not it," she insisted. "That's not what happened. You did something to them." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then pulled over. He turned to look at her, and for the first time Sophia felt the full power of those eyes, deep brown, almost black, with a depth that made her feel like she was looking into a bottomless well. "Do you really want to know?" he asked, his voice deepening. Part of her wanted to say no, to ask him to take her home and forget about this evening. But she nodded. "I can persuade people," Adrian said slowly. "Not in the conventional sense. I can make them do what I want." "Like hypnosis?" she asked, trying to find a rational explanation. "No deeper than that." "Have you ever heard of Los Dominadores? The controllers," she translated, shaking her head. "No, what is that?" "An ancient legend. According to it, there are people born with a special ability, the ability to control others' minds, just with their eyes. Some say this ability comes from ancient Aztec bloodlines. Others say it's the result of mysterious rituals performed under the full moon." She laughed, but the laugh died when she saw his serious expression. "Are you saying you're one of them, a dominador?" Adrian smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm saying you're a smart woman, Sophia. You've seen what I can do. The waiters, the robbers. I didn't need to touch them, didn't need to speak, just look." A cold sensation spread through her. She placed her hand on the door handle, ready to run if necessary. "Don't be afraid," Adrian said, his voice suddenly gentler. "I don't intend to harm you. I like you, Sophia. I really do." "How can I believe you? If you can control people's minds, how do I know I'm here because I want to be, not because you're controlling me?" Adrian was silent for a moment, then started the car. "Let's go somewhere more public. Perhaps a coffee will help you feel safer." She should have refused, should have demanded he take her home, but part of her, a part she wasn't sure was her own or had been controlled, wanted to know more. Diego woke up on his second morning at the cabin feeling refreshed. He prepared coffee and opened his laptop, determined to write at least 2000 words today. But when he hit the connect button, nothing happened. Strange, he muttered, checking the line. The cable from the router to the wall socket was still connected, but there was no signal. He decided to check the exterior line. Diego followed the cable along the side of the house. It ran along the ground for about 50 meters to a utility pole. When he reached halfway, he stopped in astonishment. The cable had been cleanly cut, the two ends about half a meter apart. "Who could have done this?" Diego whispered. There was no sign of animal gnawing or natural damage. This was a clean cut, as if done with scissors or a sharp knife. He looked around the dense forest, suddenly feeling watched. A light breeze blew through the treetops, creating a strange rustling sound like whispers. Diego shivered, deciding he would report the issue to Mrs. Martinez later. On his way back to the house, he stopped by the stream. The water was so clear he could see each pebble at the bottom. Diego knelt down and scooped up a handful to drink. It was cold and sweet, with natural mineral flavors, perhaps the best water he had ever tasted. When he returned to the house, Diego felt slightly dizzy, a mild headache beginning at the back of his skull. He decided to continue writing without internet. Perhaps this was actually an advantage. Fewer distractions. As night fell, Diego began noticing strange things. The water meter in the kitchen appeared to have stopped. The light bulbs flickered with no pattern. And although the house had electric heating, the air was so cold he could see his breath. Diego decided to check the electric meter at the back of the house. When he stepped outside with his flashlight, he noticed a strange light from within the forest, like the headlights of a vehicle. Curious, he headed toward the light. Diego ventured deeper into the forest, following the strange light. As he got closer, he realized it was the headlights of an old pickup truck, parked in a small clearing among the pine trees. He turned off his flashlight and carefully approached, hiding behind tree trunks. A figure stood beside the truck, bending down as if examining something on the ground. Diego couldn't see the person's face clearly, just the outline of a middle-aged man, broad-shouldered, wearing a hat. Suddenly, the ground in front of the man seemed to move. Diego blinked, unsure of what he was seeing. Under the dim headlights, it appeared as if the earth was opening up, forming a hole. What followed was even stranger. A deer ran across the clearing, then suddenly stumbled, sank down and disappeared as if the ground had swallowed it whole. Its cry was brief, a stifled moan followed only by the sound of earth closing over it. The truck's headlights flashed once, and in that moment Diego could see the man's profile, an ordinary face, but somehow familiar. Diego was almost certain it was someone from the nearby town, a person he had seen somewhere before. The engine continued running for a few more seconds. The sound filled the forest like a buzzing that seemed to come from all directions until it shut off. And instantly, everything was plunged into complete darkness. Not a spark of light, no glow coming from the sky, no reflection on the stream, just emptiness and cold. The silence was so powerful that Diego thought he could hear his own blood. For a moment he thought the sound of footsteps was an illusion, but no. Someone was walking behind him slowly, with a steady rhythm, crushing wet leaves on the ground. When Diego turned, the man was there. He had appeared from the darkness without a sound. He was no longer in front of the truck. He approached until he was close enough for Diego to feel his breath, the smell of fresh mud. He observed Diego without saying anything, his eyes barely gleaming from the sky's reflection. Then he spoke. His voice was hoarse, low, emotionless. "Your presence is obvious," he said. "There's no point trying to hide from me." Diego didn't know what to do, said nothing. There was a brief silence, and he felt the man's hand on his arm. It was rough cold with a strength disproportionate to his size. He squeezed his fingers until Diego felt pain. "Did you drink water from the stream?" the man asked. Diego didn't answer. The man squeezed harder and asked the same question again, closer, so close that Diego could feel his humid breath on his neck. Diego said yes, that he had drunk from it. Where else? If that was the only water source near the house, if he didn't drink from there, he didn't drink from anywhere. The man released him slowly. The contact of his hand left a mark that burned. He stepped back a few paces without taking his eyes off Diego. "Try it," he said. "Try to move a tree with your mind. The stream water gives those powers." At that moment, without knowing why, Diego was certain the man wasn't speaking figuratively. He stood still for a few seconds, not knowing if what he had just heard was an order, a taunt, or a test. The man didn't move. He was waiting for Diego to follow his instruction. The thing is, Diego had seen him do what he was asking moving trees with his mind. Diego tried to think of something logical, some explanation, but the entire situation was absurd. A stranger in the middle of the forest, a truck turned on in the middle of nowhere, trees moving as if they had learned to walk. He looked up at the nearest trunk. It was tall, thick, covered with moss, and had roots that looked like fingers sinking into the earth. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. He just looked at it. He tried once without conviction, then again closing his fists, and once more as if the force of thought was enough to move something. Nothing, not a creak, not a leaf trembled. Diego felt a wave of embarrassment. He saw himself from the outside standing in the middle of the forest trying to move a tree with his gaze. It was ridiculous, a childish thought of village superstition. For a moment he laughed, or thought he did. A nervous laugh rising in his throat immediately went out. He felt stupid for even considering the possibility that the stream water had something special. But then something happened to his left. A branch broke with a dry, violent sound so loud it reverberated through the ground. It was a disproportionate crack, as if the wood had been torn from the inside. The echo lingered in the air. Diego was disconcerted because that same branch seconds before was the one he had tried to move. He looked toward the tree. That same branch had broken in two and hung to one side, still attached by fibrous strands dripping thick sap onto the ground. "I did it," Diego whispered. "I really did it." The man observed without appearing surprised. He walked a few steps toward the broken trunk and stopped in front of it. He slowly raised his hand and rested it on the bark. The ground trembled very slightly, but enough for the leaves above Diego's head to begin falling in circles. The trunk that had been still arched backward with a wet grave sound, as if something was breaking inside. The roots began to emerge from the earth one after another, dripping mud stretching to the surface like living limbs. The tree wasn't moving because of wind. It was raising itself, and it was doing so in obedience to him. What followed was as if the forest split into thousands of fragments. Everything moved, but without direction. Trunks twisted upon themselves, roots elongated until they confused with each other. Colors changed with each breath. The ground seemed to float and trees leaned like waves. A dull or constant noise came from everywhere, a vibration so deep that Diego felt it running through his bones. Smells mixed wet earth and resin. For an instant, Diego had the impression of being inside something alive, an enormous body readjusting from within. And then everything stopped abruptly. The silence was so immediate that it seemed unnatural. Not even the air moved. The ground was quiet, the trees motionless, and the only thing Diego felt was a stab behind his head, a burning sensation that rose to his forehead and left him feeling nauseated. The man stood in front of him, staring. "Did you enjoy the trip?" he asked. "Did what you saw seem real to you?" Diego didn't know what to say, just tried to breathe, but his throat was closed and his legs were trembling. The man asked what he was doing in the forest at this hour, said he shouldn't have come alone nor so late. "My name is Mateo," the man said. "Mateo Delgado. I manage the water here." "Manage the water?" Mateo nodded. "The stream water has special properties. It allows certain people to develop specific abilities. As you've seen, I can move objects, and you broke a branch." "But why?" Diego asked. "Why does the water do that?" Mateo glanced up at the starry sky. "There's an ancient legend about Los Dominadores, the controllers. They say they're descendants of Aztec shamans with the ability to control others' minds with just their eyes. But other rare individuals like you and me develop a different ability. We control the environment, not human minds." Diego shook his head, trying to digest this information. "So if I continue drinking the water?" "Your power will grow," Mateo said. "But be careful. Not all those with abilities use them wisely. There are people like the man in Mexico City." "What man?" Diego asked. Mateo looked at Diego strangely. Adrian Montero, a powerful dominator. He can control anyone with just his gaze, and he doesn't hesitate to use that power. Diego felt a chill. What are you warning me about? Mateo approached Diego again, too close for comfort. I'm warning you that people like us must be careful. We've been gifted with power, but it comes with responsibility. Tonight, you've been welcomed into a new world, but remember, we're not the only ones in it. The bright lights of the shopping mall made Sophia feel a little safer. They sat in a small cafe surrounded by the sounds of people talking and cups clinking. She hoped that in this public place with so many people around, she would be safer. Adrian had just told her about Los Dominadores and his mind control power. She didn't want to believe it, but after what she had witnessed at the restaurant, she couldn't deny it. How long have you had this ability? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I was born with it, Adrian replied. It started when I was young. Small things like making classmates give me their toys or persuading teachers to give me higher grades. As I grew older, it became stronger. A waiter approached their table, placing down 2 steaming cups of coffee. They hadn't ordered anything. These were exactly the coffees they had mentioned minutes before, without raising a hand, without looking toward the counter. Enjoy, the waiter said, walking away without waiting for a response. Adrian smiled, picked up his coffee, and started talking about something else. Movies, travel, ordinary things. His voice was soft, captivating. Sophia felt her tension gradually easing, though she wasn't sure if it was from the comfort of normal conversation or from his power. When it came time to pay, it was the same as at the restaurant. The bill had been paid. Not a word, not a look, just the receipt with a blue stamp, courtesy of the house. Do you always use your power like this? She asked. To get things for free, Adrian laughed. Those are minor benefits. I can do much more. You know, the world opens up in ways most people can't imagine when you can persuade anyone to do anything. A shiver ran down Sophia's spine. So can you control me, too? Adrian was silent for a moment, looking deep into her eyes. I could, he admitted, but I prefer you come to me genuinely. How do I know you're not controlling me right now? The question hung between them. A frightening thought occurred to her. If she were being controlled, would she even know? Or would she think every decision was her own? Adrian placed his hand over hers on the table. She felt a strange vibration run from the point of contact up her arm, a tingling sensation like a mild electric shock. If I were controlling you, he said softly, you wouldn't be asking that question. She pulled her hand back, feeling short of breath. On her wrist where he had touched her, a faint red mark formed like a mild burn. What did you just do? She whispered, staring at the redness. I'm just showing you, Adrian said, that while I could control your mind, I don't need to. I can show you incredible things, Sophia, things very few get to see. She looked up, his eyes seeming darker under the artificial light of the mall. What things? Come with me, he said, standing and offering his hand. I'll show you. She wanted to refuse, wanted to say she needed to go home, that it was too late. But instead she found herself standing, placing her hand in his and allowing him to lead her through the late-night shopping crowd. As they walked through the mall's main corridor, Sophia noticed something strange. People all oriented toward them, not looking directly, but a subtle shift in posture. A young woman leaned away to clear a path for them before even seeing them. A security guard automatically opened a door as they approached. A couple arguing stopped as they passed by, then continued when they were far away. They don't realize it, Adrian whispered in her ear, but they all sense it. The primitive part of their brains knows there's something different, that they should yield. Like animals know not to attack a predator, she whispered. Adrian smiled. Exactly. Diego sat with his back against a tree trunk, watching Mateo Delgado manipulate the environment around them. Trees bent. The ground shook slightly. Even the nearby stream water seemed to run upstream for a moment. It's all about controlling your own mind first, Mateo explained. Once you master your thoughts, you can direct them outward. The others like us, Diego asked. Where are they? Scattered everywhere, Mateo said. Most don't know who they are. They think they're just lucky or have good intuition. They never drink enough from special sources to truly awaken their power? And Adrian Montero, the man you mentioned? Mateo's face turned serious. Montero is different. He doesn't just know about his power. He seeks out others like him, collects them. Collects them for what? Power. Influence. The Dominadores have an ancient tradition of gathering into secret, powerful groups. They call them circulos circles. A strong circulo can control an entire city. Diego shook his head, trying to process the information. And he wants me to join his circulo? No, Mateo said. You're not a Dominador. You're the other kind like me. We can influence the environment, not people. Montero has no interest in us, unless we get in his way. And how have I gotten in his way? Mateo was silent for a moment, observing Diego carefully. The house you're staying in, it used to belong to one of the members of Montero's circulo, a woman named Sofia Velasquez. Sofia, the woman who owns the house? Diego asked, trying to remember what Mrs. Martinez had said about the previous owner. No, Mateo said. Sofia was a tenant like you. She was a reporter investigating Montero's circulo. She discovered the stream water and started understanding what was happening. But then she met Montero and never completed her investigation. What do you mean she died? Worse, Mateo said, his voice dropping. She became one of his followers, a puppet, no free will. She's still alive, still goes to work, but every decision, every action is controlled by him. Diego felt cold. And you think I'm in danger? I know you're in danger, Mateo said. Why do you think I cut your internet line? I was trying to keep you isolated until I could talk to you. Montero has eyes and ears everywhere. He's always looking for new people, people he can control, or people who might pose a threat. A threat. I'm just a writer. A writer who drank the stream water and has the ability to influence the physical environment. That's enough. Besides, you're in the house where Sofia discovered many things about Montero. He'll want to know what you found. Diego stood up suddenly, feeling exposed under the moonlight. So what should I do? Mateo placed a heavy hand on Diego's shoulder. First, go back to the house. I'll teach you how to hide your mental presence, make yourself harder to detect. Then we need to find what Sofia hid in that house. Evidence of the circulo's activities strong enough to stop Montero. How do we know she hid anything? Because, Mateo said, starting to lead the way through the forest toward the wooden cabin. She told me before she met Montero. She had gathered enough evidence to expose their entire network. Diego followed his mind, spinning with the new information. On one side was a man who could control others' minds looking for him. On the other was a man who could bend reality, whom he had just met and wasn't sure he could trust. As they approached the house, Diego noticed a strange light emanating from inside, too bright and too even to be electric lights. Every window glowed as if the house was burning from within, but there was no smoke or fire. Mateo, Diego whispered, pointing toward the house. What is that? Mateo froze, grabbing Diego's arm to stop him. Did you leave any lights on when you left? Just the porch light. It could be a trap, or... Mateo didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he pulled Diego down behind a bush, signaling for silence. From this angle, Diego could see a figure moving inside the house, a tall silhouette moving deliberately and purposefully from room to room. Montero, Mateo whispered. He's found us. Adrian took Sofia to a luxurious apartment in the Polanco district. The apartment was on the top floor of a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Mexico City's glittering nightlights. The interior was minimalist but expensive. Dark wood, leather glass, and metal. Impressive, Sofia said, trying to keep her voice light despite her racing heart. She still didn't know why she was here. Part of her wanted to run, but another part was drawn to this man and his power. Wine, Adrian asked, moving toward a bar in the corner of the room. No, thank you. I think I've had enough for tonight. Adrian smiled. I won't do anything you're uncomfortable with, Sofia. Really, she said, her voice sharper than intended. How can I know that? How do I know you're not forcing me to feel comfortable right now? Adrian poured himself a strong drink, then sat in the leather chair across from her. You want proof, a way to know you're acting of your free will? Maybe that's impossible, she said. Not necessarily, he said. Try this. Do something I wouldn't want you to do. Something contrary to my interests. She thought for a moment. Like leaving here, if that's what you want. She looked toward the door. She could go. Perhaps that would be the smartest thing. But part of her wanted to understand more about Adrian's abilities, about Los Dominadores, about this mysterious world she had just glimpsed. Instead of standing up and leaving, she took out her phone. "I'll text my friend," she said. "Tell her where I am, in case I do something untoward." Adrian laughed. "Exactly," she said, beginning to type the message. Adrian sipped his drink, watching her. She sent a message to Lucia, her best friend, letting her know where she was and with whom. She hit send and placed her phone on the table. "Satisfied?" Adrian asked. "Not entirely," she admitted. "But it helps me feel better. I understand your concern. Power like mine, it can be frightening. If I wanted you here just to manipulate you, I wouldn't have explained about Los Dominadores. I wouldn't have told you about my ability." She had to admit that made sense. "So why did you tell me?" "Because I think you're special, Sophia. You're intelligent, observant. You saw what most people miss, and I'm tired of pretending." "Pretending what?" "Pretending to be normal. Pretending I'm not different." Adrian stood up, walking to the large window overlooking the city. "Do you know how many people like me there are in this city?" She shook her head. "Hundreds," he said. "Most don't even know who they are. They just think they're highly persuasive or lucky or charismatic. But some of us, those who have become fully aware of our abilities, gather together. Gather like some kind of club. A circulo," Adrian said. "A circle of like-minded individuals. People who understand each other. People who don't have to pretend." "And you want me to join your circulo?" Adrian turned back to look at her, his eyes seeming to glow in the dim light. "I want you to see it. Understand it. Then you can decide." A shiver ran down her spine. Not of fear, but of something else. Excitement, curiosity, perhaps danger. She knew she should decline, should leave immediately, but instead she heard herself say, "Show me." Diego and Mateo watched from their hiding place as the figure inside the house continued searching. The strange light seemed to be emanating from the person himself, not from electric lights. "What should we do?" Diego whispered. "Wait," Mateo replied. "He won't stay long. He's looking for something specific." "The evidence Sophia collected." Mateo nodded. "Yes, but she hid it well. He won't find it." They continued watching in silence. After about half an hour, the light in the house dimmed and the figure appeared at the front door. Diego held his breath as he clearly saw the man's face. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair neatly styled and an expensive suit. But most notable were his eyes. Even from this distance, Diego could sense the power emanating from them, as if they were projecting an invisible magnetic field. "Is that Adrian Montero?" Diego whispered. Mateo nodded. "That's him?" Montero stood still for a moment on the porch, sweeping his gaze across the forest. In one terrifying moment, Diego felt the man's eyes stop where they were hiding. But then Montero stepped off the porch, heading to a luxury car parked nearby that they hadn't noticed before. There was someone sitting in the passenger seat. As Montero opened the door, the interior light came on, allowing Diego a glimpse of a young woman with long dark hair. "Sophia," Mateo whispered. "She's with him." Montero said something to the woman, then looked back toward the house once more. Then he got into the car and drove away. "They're gone," Diego breathed in relief. "Temporarily," Mateo said, standing up. "We need to find that evidence before he comes back." They quickly moved into the house. Inside, everything had been ransacked, drawers pulled open, books fallen from shelves, cushions flipped over. "He searched thoroughly," Diego said. "But not thoroughly enough," Mateo replied. "Sophia was smart. She wouldn't hide something in an obvious place." "So where is it?" Mateo looked around the room. Sophia was a reporter. She always carried a camera, a digital camera with a memory card. Diego shook his head. "I haven't seen any camera here." "Not the camera," Mateo said. "The memory card. It's small, easy to hide. She could have hidden it anywhere." They began searching, but more systematically than Montero had. Mateo checked cracks in the walls, under the floor, in electrical outlets. Diego examined the furniture, looking for secret compartments or loose linings. After an hour of fruitless searching, Diego sat down on a chair in the living room exhausted. Maybe she took it with her, he said. Or Montero already found it. No, Mateo insisted. He wouldn't leave empty-handed if he'd found it. It's still here, but we're missing something. Diego looked around the room, trying to think like Sofia. If he were a reporter with important information, where would he hide it? Somewhere safe yet accessible. Somewhere no one would think to look. His eyes stopped on the water bottle sitting on the table, the bottle he had filled from the stream that morning. Beside it was a pillbox he had brought for the trip, a small plastic container with compartments for each day of the week. Medication, Diego suddenly said. Did she use any medication? Mateo looked up. I don't know. Why? Diego stood up, moving toward the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. He opened the door, checking each medication bottle left behind. Most were empty or nearly empty, presumably left when Sofia departed. At the back of the cabinet was a harmless-looking vitamin bottle, the daily kind that many people use. Diego opened the lid and poured out the pills. At first, only regular vitamin tablets fell out, but then something small and black, a micro SD memory card. I found it, Diego whispered. Mateo quickly came over. That's it. Quick, we need to see what's on it. Diego retrieved his laptop, inserted the memory card, and opened the files. There were dozens of photos and videos, documenting secret meetings, money exchanges, and most notably footage of Adrian Montero using his ability to control politicians, police officers, and powerful businessmen. But what was truly shocking was a text file titled Guide for Newcomers. It detailed how Los Dominadores operated the structure of the Círculos, and most importantly, how they maintained their power through a drug extracted from the stream, water concentrated into a much stronger substance. So that's why he wants this house, Diego said. Not just for the evidence Sofia had, but because it's close to the water source. Exactly, Mateo said. And now we have the evidence to stop him. How? Diego asked. If he can control police politicians. Not all of them, Mateo said. There are people still beyond his control. And there are others like us, people with different abilities, people who can't be controlled by mind. Diego copied the files to a USB drive, then tucked it into his pocket. So what do we do now? Leave, Mateo said. Montero will be back. We need to get this information to... His words were cut off by the sound of a car stopping outside. Both men froze, looking at each other in fear. Too late, Mateo whispered. Your Círculo meets here, Sofia asked as Adrian led her down a private elevator from his apartment. The elevator took them below the basement, deeper than she thought possible. Not all of them, Adrian said. Just the core group, those with the strongest abilities. The elevator doors opened, revealing a long hallway illuminated by soft, wall-mounted lights. Adrian led her down the corridor to a large door made of dark wood. You must promise that what you see here will remain secret, he said, turning to look at her. She nodded, her throat too dry to speak. The rational part of her was screaming that she should run, but another part, a much stronger part, wanted to know what was behind that door. Adrian opened the door and they stepped into a large circular room. Dim light came from tall candlesticks placed around the perimeter. In the center of the room was a large, round table surrounded by about a dozen chairs. Only 3 were occupied. As they entered, those 3 people stood. 2 men and a woman, all dressed in formal black attire. They looked at Sofia with undisguised curiosity. This is Sofia, Adrian introduced her, the one I told you about. Does she have the ability? The woman asked, her voice deep and resonant. No, Adrian replied, not yet, but she has potential. Sofia looked at him confused. What potential? To become one of us, Adrian said, a dominator. But you said you're born with that ability, she protested. One of the men, tall, thin, with silver hair and bright eyes, stepped toward her. Some are born with it. Others can acquire it with the proper help. He handed Sofia a crystal glass containing a clear liquid. This is how we maintain our power, and how we bestow it upon those chosen. She looked at the liquid, uncertain what to do. What is it? Water, Adrian said, but not ordinary water. It comes from a special source, concentrated and refined. It amplifies what's already within you, Sofia. the latent ability that all humans have but very few know how to tap into. And you think I have this potential? I know you do, Adrian said, his voice soft but certain. From the moment I met you, there's a sensitivity about you, a deep understanding. You see what others miss, that's the sign. She held the glass, rotating it in her hand, watching the liquid shimmer in the candlelight. And if I drink this, you'll begin to see the world as we see it, the woman said. We'll see the invisible threads connecting every mind, and eventually you'll learn to pull those threads. Sophia looked at Adrian, searching for reassurance or warning in his eyes. But he just looked back at her, waiting for her decision. I don't know, she said. This is too much. No one's forcing you to decide right now, Adrian said. I just wanted you to see, to understand. To know there's another world beyond the one you've lived in your entire life. She set the glass down on the table. I need time to think. Of course, Adrian said, but she could see a flicker of disappointment cross his face. I'll take you home. As they returned to the elevator, Sophia suddenly remembered something. Wait, there's one more thing I want to do before we go. What's that? There's a house on the outskirts of the city, she said. A small wooden cabin I once rented when working on an article. I think I left some important documents there. Could we stop by? Adrian looked at her strangely, but nodded. Of course, give me the address. In the car, Sophia felt Adrian's presence stronger than ever. He drove in silence, occasionally glancing at her as if trying to read her thoughts. She wondered if he could do that, not just control, but read minds. As they neared the wooden cabin, a strange feeling began forming within her. A sense that she had been here before, but under different circumstances. A sense that she had found something important here, and then had it taken away. We're here, Adrian said as he parked in front of the house. Sophia looked through the window, seeing lights inside. Someone's there. Perhaps the new tenant, Adrian suggested. But something in his voice made her think he knew more than he was saying. Can we still check? She asked. Adrian nodded and opened the car door. Of course, I'll come with you. As they walked toward the house, Sophia felt a powerful urge rising within her. A sense that she had been here for an important reason, that she had found something that Adrian had made her forget. And as they got closer to the door, a memory suddenly returned, a memory of stream water, of a micro SD memory card, and of what she had discovered about Adrian's circulo. But it was too late. Adrian had opened the door and they stood face to face with two men inside, an older one with a hardened face and a younger one holding a laptop. Mateo, Adrian said, his voice cold. And Diego Herrera, I presume. How unfortunate to find you both. Mateo stood straight, his eyes moving from Adrian to Sophia. Sophia, he said, do you remember me? Sophia was about to say no, but suddenly she remembered. She remembered everything. The weeks investigating Los Dominadores, the stream water, the circulo. She remembered how Mateo had helped her, how he had warned her about Adrian, how she had hidden the memory card. You were right, she whispered, about everything. Adrian looked at her, a cold anger flashing in his eyes. Sophia, he said, his voice suddenly changing, becoming deeper, more powerful. Look at me. Sophia felt the urge to look at him, but she resisted. Somehow she knew that if she looked into his eyes, she would forget everything again, would become his puppet again. No, she said, taking a step back. Sophia, Adrian repeated, this time a command. Look at me. She felt her will wavering. His power was too strong, and she had been under his control for too long. She felt her head beginning to turn toward him, her eyes beginning to rise. But suddenly a loud boom broke Adrian's concentration. The floor shook, the windows rattled. Mateo stood with his arm raised, and the ground under Adrian's feet was cracking, forming a widening fissure. Run, Sophia! Mateo shouted. Run! She didn't need to be told twice. She bolted out the door, running toward the forest. Behind her she could hear sounds of breaking and shouting as Mateo used his environmental control ability to fight against Adrian. She kept running, not knowing where to go, only knowing she needed to get as far away from Adrian as possible. Eventually exhausted, she stopped by the stream. The water gurgled, moonlight reflecting off its surface like liquid mercury. She knelt down, looking into the water, trying to understand everything that had happened. How could Adrian have controlled her for so long? How could she have forgotten all she had discovered? And then she realized the water. The water from the stream that Adrian had refined. That was the source of his power, and also how he controlled those who weren't natural-born dominadores. He had given it to her, perhaps in drinks or food, and it had given him control over her. But now she was free, and she knew the truth. She heard footsteps behind her and turned around, afraid that Adrian had found her. But it was Diego, the young man from the cabin. "Sophia," he gasped, running up to her. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said. "What about Mateo?" Diego shook his head, his face grim. "I don't know. When I ran, they were still fighting." "Montero is very strong, but Mateo can control the environment around him. It was like a miniature earthquake." "And the memory card?" she asked, suddenly remembering the most important thing. Diego patted his pants pocket. "Right here. All the evidence about Los Dominadores and the Circulo, enough to start bringing down their entire network." Sophia sighed in relief, but only for a moment. "We have to go," she said. "As far away as possible. Adrian won't give up easily." Diego nodded, and they began making their way deeper into the forest, hoping to find a way out of this area and back to the city where they could begin revealing the truth about Los Dominadores. But as they walked, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Adrian and his eyes, those eyes that had controlled her for weeks without her even realizing it. And she couldn't help wondering how many others like him were out there, how many dominadores manipulating those around them, building circulos of power, silently controlling the invisible threads that connect our minds. And was there really any way to stop them? As they passed through a thin section of forest, Sophia stopped abruptly, feeling a strange presence. Diego stopped too, looking at her with concern. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just feel—" And then she saw it. A flicker of movement in the darkness, a familiar silhouette standing motionless in the shadow of a tall pine. "If you run," a familiar voice echoed from the darkness, "you'll never know what you're running from." Adrian stepped out of the shadows, clothes torn and dirty, but his eyes still bright with unmistakable power. Diego raised his hands, and Sophia could feel the air around them vibrating as he tried to use his newly discovered ability, but Adrian just smiled. "Not strong enough," he said. "Neither of you is strong enough." "Where's Mateo?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. "Mateo has had an unfortunate accident," Adrian said, stepping closer. "But don't worry, he'll live," in a manner of speaking. "We have evidence," Diego said, "about everything you've done, about the Circulo." "And you think that matters?" Adrian laughed. "You think anyone will believe you? You think those you'll bring this evidence to aren't part of the Circulo or can't be controlled by it?" "Not everyone," Sophia said. "Enough," Adrian replied. "Enough people." "So what then?" she asked. "Will you kill us?" Adrian shook his head, his face almost sad. "I would never hurt you, Sophia. I told you I like you. I really do." "Then let us go," she said. "I can't do that," he replied, "but I can offer a choice." "What choice?" Diego asked, still ready to fight. "Join me," Adrian said simply. "Both of you. Become part of the Circulo. Enjoy the power, freedom, and influence it brings, or what?" Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Or forget," Adrian said, and for the first time she looked directly into his eyes. "Forget everything." And as she looked into his eyes, she felt her mind beginning to slip away, her memories beginning to fade, her will beginning to weaken. Beside her, she felt Diego experiencing the same thing. "Don't look," she tried to say, but it was too late. Her last sensation before darkness engulfed her was a strange sense of familiarity, the feeling that all of this had happened before and would happen again, because for a dominador tonight, and every night belongs to them. Have you ever looked into a stranger's eyes and felt something inexplicably powerful? A connection that goes beyond words? Perhaps what you felt wasn't connection at all, but control. The next time a stranger's gaze makes you do something you never thought you would, remember this story. Because Los Dominadores aren't just legend. They're around us, controlling the invisible strings of society. And if you're hearing me tell this story, it might already be too late.